Hello, I'm here today as a request because somebody asked me to talk about hi-fi cables, and there's a reason why I haven't done in the past, and that's because it's one of the darkest, sort of most unfathomable area of hi-fi that you can ever really sort of imagine. And like with ordinary components and things, hi-fi manufacturers, as I've said before, they do like to try and blind you with science, and really the science has very little to do with what the stuff sounds like. Okay, so that's why I've not really talked about it in the past. I do know the philosophy of cables though, or what the philosophy ought to be. And it goes something like this, that they're there to tweak an otherwise acceptable or good hi-fi in a room or something like that where something isn't quite right and you need to sort it out. And the example that I will give is from my own experience, and you'll hear about it a bit more on my video, the Rega Top End Experience, where I listened to the Isis and Osiris CD player and an amp, and I took along my albums that were being problems, or some of my albums that were being problems, and mainly to do with the bass. In the room that I was listening to them at the time, the bass was slightly too heavy, and when I played them on really top end electronics, going through a comparable set of speakers to the one that I own, which is in hi-fi terms very cheap. They were the Rega RS3s. I've got the R3s, which were the sort of previous generation model. I suddenly realised that actually that bass isn't really there, and that I was having problems with my bass control, and so rather than sort of going through all the all my ancillaries and deciding what the hell is going on here, probably my amp, the Mira 3, probably wasn't as good at reproducing bass as it should be. But having said that, it just needed a tweak, and so I changed the cables that I was using. If you choose your hi-fi carefully and you listen to it and you listen to comparable products and all that sort of thing and do side-by-side things, you shouldn't end up with a hi-fi that is innately either too trebly, too bassy, or not enough control, or not enough stereo separation or whatever, because you decide on what's important to you and what you want out of hi-fi for the kind of music that you listen to, and you should end up with something that's about right for you. But that's all very well and good in a demonstrator's control room where they've probably using really high-end mains cabling and all that sort of thing. The furniture in the shop is all designed to create an acoustically fantastic environment and everything like that, and they've managed to get a really good acoustic in their shop. You get it home into your room, and suddenly you realise you've got to let hi-fi bed in. It takes a little while, so you can't just decide on the first play of a few discs that it's got this problem or it's got that problem. You've got to give it a chance. I mean, I'd been living with my hi-fi for years when I realised that perhaps my cables aren't doing what they should be doing. But once you've been through that bedding period, you may well find that a few albums have problems, and therefore what do you do about it? And then you can sort of perhaps start investigating cables. Now, the philosophy behind cabling as far as your budget goes is, and this sort of is what Hi-Fi magazine advice here, I'm not a great fan of what hi-fi, as you will know from my other videos. But sometimes they talk common sense, and financially, stands and cables are really, or should really, equate to about 10% of your budget, sort of on top of what you've bought. So if your hi-fi is worth, and let's be kind to ourselves, let's give us £2,000, £2,000 to spend on a hi-fi, you know, in a nice world sort of thing, then you should allow an extra £200 on top of that for speaker stands if you need them, and for cables. Okay, if you're using floor standing speakers, which at that price of a hi-fi I would hope you were, then you obviously don't need to worry about those so much, and you can spend a bit more on your cabling. All right, but you need enough speaker cable and to sort of run from wherever your hi-fi is set up to your speakers, and you need an interconnect, at least one interconnect, depending on how many source components you've got. But let's just say it's CD amp and speakers. You know, you'll need an interconnect to go with your from your CD player to your amp, and usually you'll get a throwaway one. If it's, you know, as thin as a piece of damp string or something like that, then it's really not worth having. Okay. So yeah, that's really all I know about speaker cables, really, and interconnects. I possibly you've got to try and make sure that your speaker cables are the same length as each other, which might mean getting one that's a bit too long for your requirements, and one that's about the right length. There's all sorts of voodoo reasons, here be black magic people, as to why that should be, but there you go. That's really the benefit of my experience on speaker cables. It's a bit of a minefield, and it's a case of suck it and see. So here endeth the video. Bye.